Welcome everyone to the meeting round for Monday the 25th of July. The evacuation procedure. So in the event of fire, I'll just give you the important bits. Sound the alarm, attack the fire if possible, and safe. On hearing the evacuation signal, please carry out the following. Exit the building by your nearest stated exit. All visitors to report to Assembly Point G. All staff to report to their designated Assembly Point on your pathway car park. Do not leave the Assembly Point for any reason until told to do so by the incident controller or the fire brigade officer. And our incident controller this evening is it you, Richard?
It probably is, yeah.
And a very great welcome to
Thank you very much. I wouldn't be like to speak control. I don't know what to do anymore.
Well, it's very good to see you. Welcome. I haven't received any apologies, except that Kerry Parker, the last time I spoke to him was in Maidstone, making his way back up here. So he will be here if he manages to get here before 7:30. He said he'll join us. So as soon as he can. Otherwise, he could accept his apologies. Any disposable pecuniary or non-pecuniary interests? Anybody? Thank you very much. Moving on. Thank you. We're on to public participation. We have got a question today. Do you want to read it out?
I can do.
Yes,
If you want to. Yeah. Thank you. Our question was that in 2021, only 5 out of the 69 projects funded by the first Green Shoots funding scheme were based in North Warwickshire, and 3 of these were based in Atherstone. Given the council's commitment to tackling climate change and the opportunities which this new round of funding presents itself, which is up to £25,000 for each project, there is clearly a need not only to signpost but also to actively engage and support organisations in North Warwickshire to apply for this funding. In particular, where it takes forward commitments made and targets set out by the Borough Council's climate change to achieve a net gain in biodiversity and support our communities to deliver low carbon projects and climate adaptation initiatives. Can this council commit to engaging, encouraging and supporting community organisations, schools, parish councils to apply for the next round of Warwickshire County Council Green Shoots Community Climate Change Fund 2022 and actively work with groups to develop and submit these applications before the deadline in September 2019?
Thanks very much. Thank you for your question, and you've all got the answer there. I will read it out, and I would like, just before I start on as it were, an official response. It has well been recognised by the county council, and that they haven't had as many projects in the north of the county, including on Eton and Bedford, as well as they would like, and they really focus as well, and we can join in that. And certainly I think most of the county council have sent all information on this to the parish councils that are in my parish. So but our official response is this council very much supports the Green Shoot scheme and has been encouraging the county council to focus on projects in the north of the county following the success of the first round of funding. Warwickshire County Council has acknowledged the need to support greater engagement from within our area, as highlighted on its website, where it states, due to less funding being awarded to organisations in Nuneaton and Bedford and the North Warwickshire boroughs in the first round of funding, the second round of funding is seeking to attract more applications from projects that support providing benefits to these areas. North Warwickshire Borough Council has been actively publicising and promoting the second round of Green Shoots funding. Information on the scheme was sent to all borough councillors, parish councils and schools. The council's community development team has also been actively engaging with organisations developing or running specific projects. We are already aware of potential projects in Kingsbury, Piccadilly and Hartshill. The Green Shoots event organised by Warwickshire Carver and Warwickshire County Council was held at Wood End Village Hall in mid-June. And the Borough Council continues to work closely with the county and Carver to signpost any interest. Officers are in further discussions with colleagues at Warwickshire County Council to organise further drop-in sessions in our area. North Warwickshire Borough Council will continue to promote the scheme, and the Corporate Director at Streetscape will be asked to work with the all-party climate change member group to see what further support can be given to schools, community organisations and other groups in the borough wishing to make bids to the fund. But further information can be found out, and there's a website address there. Any follow-up question?
Just really about the deadlines, because obviously we may have missed the opportunities to engage schools in this because of the deadline on the 19th September, and whether there is the capacity to do a little bit more to kind of move it forwards.
Move the deadline?
No, to move progress forwards, or if we can still engage with some of those groups or not.
Yes, of course. I mean, I think there is a lot of support for engaging, and I have asked if we've got any capacity within the borough to actually support the application from some, and we will try and find as much help as we can. I think probably in Becky's team, they're a bit stretched, but if there's somebody who's really struggling, I don't think it's a very onerous process.
No, well, Ansley, as you know, have already been through the process and have actually offered to do some, guidance or some coaching, and it's kind of, it doesn't necessarily have to be very labour intensive, but actually networking and kind of putting people in touch with, do we have a clear idea of who those people who were successful in the past were, the 5 that we could actually network other people through.
Richard, would you like to?
Through you, Chair. Yes, one of the things we've spoken to the County Council, like colleagues at the County Council about, is whether we can put people in touch with counterparts in the south of the county who've had successful bids. So as I said, we certainly spoke to all the schools. I know Becky's team has been out to all the schools before they've broken up. I think we're probably expecting bids from community groups, as well as parish council and others. Discussions with the climate change leads over at the County Council about what more can be done to encourage those. And as I say, I think one of the things we could do, and we'll hopefully get to the member group, one of the things we could do is try and get support from those who've made successful bids in areas where we've got people who want to do something similar in North Warwickshire, and talk to counterparts and stuff like that in Warwickshire who've obviously been successful, about whether they can pass on their help and expertise and get this over the line here. So between us, officers, both at the county and here, we'll do everything we can to try and both encourage but also support those bits coming in one step.
Thank you. Thanks very much for the question. Thank you very much. So we're going to move on then to the minutes of the last meeting on the 16th of May. Any comments on the accuracy first? Okay. Any comments on page 5 of your report or page 6? Right, in which case I'll ask for a proposal to accept those. I'll propose from the chair. Second, thanks, Councillor Jordan. Seconded. All those in favour accepting the minutes? Thank you. Any against? Abstentions? Thank you. I'll sign those. So moving on to item 6. Yes, item 6, which is the increase in charges for street naming and numbering. Don't know whether there's any comments the officers want to make before we, I think the paper's fairly self-explanatory. Any questions from anyone? Yes.
Thank you, Chair. Just under paragraph 512, there's a statement under the table which is about the proposed uplift in the fees, which says we've benchmarked against numerous councils and we are charging a lot less than others. And then there's a sentence which is quite difficult to understand in terms of, how to interpret where we've landed in terms of uplifting these fees. We have standardised our fees, whether it is a commercial or residential property. I question why. Why is it the same, commercial and residential? And remove the price upon application from our applications for renaming a street, as we haven't carried out this process in at least 16 years. So I suppose the question is, given the amount of development that we're expecting to take place over the next 5 to 10 years, and the opportunity, since we're the only authority that can, authorise a street naming process, are we selling ourselves short as a borough in terms of what's now proposed, and is it going to be another 16 years before we again look at these fees and decide that maybe we still are charging a lot less than other people, because it's a bit of an eye-opener really, and I don't know how much, if you count back 15 years when we've been charging a lot less than others, how much revenue might we have generated given the 300 properties a year that we've been, pushing into the planning system. I don't know how many streets that is, but it just feels as though we might be selling ourselves short.
Thank you. Councillor Humphreys-Murray.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. My question is rather similar. It's what are the actual costs, and does this cover it? Because it is slightly that we've got the prices here, but mine's the same thought. Are we going to be up to date, or are we still trying to catch up? If anybody can answer that question, I would be grateful.
So,
Chair, if I can just say, certainly the officer time that we spend on this.
could you use your microphone?
If I have to, yeah.
No whispering at the back.
The staff time that we spend on this activity generally amounts to around £13,500. So if we implement these changes, then the hope is that we will generate enough income to cover that. Clearly, we haven't been covering that before now. And certainly, yes, I take the point about the more frequent review of fees and charges, and I think we'll need to do that on an annual basis going forward, much more rigorously than we have in the past.
Thank you. As you can see on yes, on 513, the estimated amount of income is 13,390, which is consistent with what Sue's just said. So, but again, it does need to be reviewed to see in future whether we are at least covering costs. It does explain at the back of the report that we can't make a profit out of this, but we should be covering costs. So we need to keep that under review. So if everyone's happy, then I'll go to the recommendation that members approve the increase in charges for the street name and numbering service in accordance with the charges in 5.1.
Sorry, Chair, I know you wanted to move us on, but I heard Sue say £13,500, and this income, she's only uplifting it by about 5k, is 13,390. I mean, I don't know how, obviously in London, the street naming is a lot more expensive, I assume, and it is proportionate to the scale and investment in the development. But if we're charging a lot less than others, is that because our overhead charge and the number of staff hours that are involved is so much less? Or it just seems to me that we're still, potentially selling ourselves at least 200k short than possibly what Sue's saying it's actually going to cost us. So
good. Sorry, carry on.
Sorry, Chair, if I'm there. I mean, the 13,000 odd that you see in paragraph 5.1.3 is, if you like, an equivalent if we had to charge these prices. Clearly, we don't know in advance of any particular year what level of activity we're going to be undertaking, which is why we try and look at these things generally over a 3-year period to ensure we cover costs over a 3-year period. If we get the same kind of level of activity, we will be just about covering our staff costs. But of course, we won't know until we get later in the year whether that is going to prove accurate or not. Which is why I think we're pitching it at this level to see what kind of activity comes forward, and then we can readjust again next year if we've not got it quite right.
So if I add to the recommendation at the end, and to be reviewed after 1 year and compared with costs, would that help? Okay. So I'm just going to write that. Did you get that? And to be reviewed after 1 year and compared with costs. So recommendation as it stands, but with that added, can I propose it, please? Thank you, Marion, seconder. Thank you, Andy, Jens. Thank you. All those in favour? Any against? Okay, that's very explained. So, sorry, moving on to item 7, is the Leisure Facilities Local Authority Trading Company. And you'll see from the report that there has been a meeting, a cross-party meeting on this, and the latest version is shown at Appendix A. And are there any comments or questions? Oh, thank you. Yeah. Thanks, Margaret.
It was a question that dawned on me as I read through Appendix A, that was sort of sharpened in my mind right at the end, which was where there's a statement under the strategic objectives to ensure that services operate commercially, are well marketed and financially viable. I just wondered if we're missing a bit of a thread here on the fact that hopefully what will happen is the company will be scanning for opportunities for funding, and getting additional resources that possibly the council wouldn't get, but the company could find, access. And I just felt it was something that was saying something positive about the change to it being a company rather than just the council services, and that might be one of the opportunities we could latch on to. I mean, it may be implicit in that statement. It just didn't shout out at me.
No, you're absolutely right. That's one of the things that they're hoping will happen. I thought, I'm just scanning it as you speak, and I can't see anything at the first step, but we do want that. Do you want to comment there? So,
I can, through you, Chair, I can.
okay.
I don't think it's picked up as a specific reference in the vision and the values and the strategic objectives. I mean, previously we've spoken about it in this forum, we've referred to it in previous board reports. The opportunity will be in the specification for the company to do that, but it didn't come up as a specific in the group meeting that it needed to be a strategic objective for the company. But clearly, if the opportunity presents itself, then I think everybody in this room would expect the company to go for it.
Well,
absolutely. Indeed.
Through you, Chair, under the aims,
Yeah.
strategic objectives, it just says a commercial entity, the company will be economic, optimise business opportunities and ensure sound financial management. So it's whether it's captured within that or not as explicit as it might be.
Yes. I wonder if you could just ask questions. The company will be economic, optimise business opportunities, ensure financial management, including seeking external funding where appropriate. Where it's appropriate, the right word, or where.
Well, it might be resources, not just funding.
Yes.
I could imagine it could be an advice or something that comes
Okay.
from Sports England or something, where they'll send someone in to work with you or something. So it's not purely about funding, but I think funding's clearly a big issue.
Okay, so what seeking resources from other sources, that's not going to work.
Outside sources.
From outside
Yeah,
sources,
outside sources.
where appropriate. We will put some appropriate work in there, won't we, Simon?
Indeed, Chair.
Yeah, it's a good point, Anne. I think we should bring that out because it's something that we want to be able to do. So with that as an amendment, like we'll have the proper amendment, I'm sure Simon will circulate it to us. And having said that, if we're happy then to go to the recommendation that we adopt the vision and the company set of values and strategic objectives for the resident facilities, local authority trading company as identified in the appendix attached to the report with the agreed amendment. Okay. I've got a proposer for that. Well, thank you, Marion. Second, thanks very much, Simon. And everyone in favour? Against? Thank you, that's carried. So, agenda item 8 is the leisure facilities service improvement plan. And there's lots of good news in here. I'd just like to start by saying thank you very much for all the hard work that's been going on here. And there's some really good stuff here about what's been put in place and some really innovative work. And I love the fact that we can now do gymnastics online. Perhaps if I can do it from an armchair, I might do it. So, thank you. Any comments, questions from anyone? Thanks, Jodie.
I had some questions around swimming. And obviously swimming is quite important, I think, to the sustainability of our centres. And obviously I note in, and obviously I note in 3.1 that, you know, the Appendix A is about quality and sustainability. And we've got some great statistics that show that swimming is now 10% higher, which I think everybody here can celebrate. But we don't necessarily understand where that 10% takes us to that sustainability, or whether we have the capacity to grow and embrace things like that. And then the further questions about how we're embracing the kind of shape up for summer. And I know that Nuneaton do quiet time focuses, so they'll have a 9 o'clock, 5 day a week kind of intervention into diving or into improving strokes, and whether we are kind of increasing our capacity sufficiently during those quiet times over the summer holidays to kind of bring in that extra top ups and kind of opportunities.
Anybody else?
So yeah, the swim 10% high capacity. In the swim scheme, we do look to grow more. We're also looking at ways of doing that in terms of looking forwards, whether we can put some extra or different resource in place if it's cost effective to do so, to get some better management of that as a thing as it grows. At the minute, our swim scheme's getting close to 900 on a scheme. So for the team that's currently there to manage it, that's probably at its limit. But
So that's our capacity now.
it's our capacity for resource to manage it. We're looking at different ways in which we can do it. Is it cost effective, etc. And if it is, then we'll bring that forward. But at the minute, I would say, yeah, it's probably at its limit from a learn to swim perspective and school swim perspective. Yeah. On the other side, I suppose with the pool programming, I know that we have open spaces where school swimming normally happens, to put more sort of fun and active things in place. What I can do, I'm not sure exactly off the top of my head what it is, but I can share what that is, and then what we look to do in future to develop that more. Okay.
Thanks.
Marion.
Thank you, Chair. It was just really to say it was great news to see that the Holsworth Fitness Hub had linked with 2 SEND groups for community groups to provide supported weekly access to the gym. I think that's absolutely fantastic, and well done. Great news. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and it's for adults, I understand, for that as well. So.
One of them is Abbey View Opportunities, which is based in Polwood. The other one's Take the Next Step, which is from Tamworth. So one of them's local, just around the corner, and the other one's a bit further away.
Brilliant. Thanks, Jodie.
Sorry. I just had a question about community sport. This was one of the reassurances we were given when Ollie Sports Centre was moved out of council control, is about the in-community sports. And I don't see anything at the moment that refers to it being brought back or enhanced. So the kind of questions that it's brilliant what's happening in all 3 centres. I understand it's been a challenge after COVID, but is it now time to start making sure that we're expanding that to Kingsbury or to Dordon or to Arlene or wherever it happens to be?
Through you, Chair, it probably is about time. Had a chat with the parks have gone through a restructure, so they've got a new business manager and the operations manager, but they only started sort of 3 or 4-ish weeks ago. So at Queen's Baton really, I spoke to one of them there about opportunities to sort of link with and work better there. But there was a little bit of a delay in getting started there while they restructure happened. But he went from speak to them, seems quite active in what they're already looking at in terms of increasing events. So we can work more with him across parks, and then look at what we can do ourselves as well. And yeah, so.
Good.
Through you, Chair. In addition to that, there are references in the service improvement plan to connections with community development. And when we've got community development up to capacity as well, that will help with some of those connections and into community groups. So there'll be more when we've got that section up to capacity.
Good. Thank you. No comments from anywhere? Thank you. So I'm going to move to the recommendation then, which is that the board notes and comments, which we don't have them, on the progress made against the requirements identified in the approved 2022-23 leisure facilities improvement plan, through which operational performance is monitored. I'm going to propose that from the chair. I've got a seconder, please. Thank you, Les. Thank you very much. Those in favour? Against? Thank you. That's through. Move on. Thank you. Item 9, which is the reopening of the High Street Safety Welcome Back Fund. This is a report really on something that's happened. So that's quite right. We should be reporting back on something that's happened, but there we have it. So is there any comments or questions? Not? Oh, yes.
Yeah. Oh, no button. Thank you. Could you tell me how much the equal parts for Atherstone, Polesworth and Coleshill were allocated? And because I'm not sure Polesworth got an equal amount of money, and I just want to make sure that they did or they didn't. If you could please tell me, can anybody tell me today, or do you want to come back to me on that?
Through you, Chair, can we come back on the detail? I wouldn't want to make the figures up. I think that the reference to Polesworth having slightly less than Atherstone and Coleshill is probably true, but let me not go any further on that. I will circulate the information. Through you, Chair, I look forward to it.
Mark, and then Jackie.
I'd just like to say, I welcome this report because I've seen the good stuff that it's actually done in Atherstone, and people are still talking about the mural on the back of the arcade. So yeah, it's good. I know it's Marmite. Some people love it, some people don't. But no, I thought the allocation went very fair, Marion.
There's no rivalry at all between those two. No. Thank you. Jackie.
Yeah, I just wanted to pick up Councillor Humphrey's question really and try and understand a bit more about this equalness between our towns. I mean, they're not equal in any sense of the word, are they? Either in population size or in terms of demographic need or in terms of impact of COVID. And so I didn't want to just let that go as if it should have all been equal schemes, because as Councillor Jordan says, you know, Atherstone has benefited quite a lot from this welcome back funding, and it, you know, as with Coleshill, it is our market town, and at the moment, if Polesworth has had anything, it's certainly not ricocheted into Dordon. So, you know, I just think we can't just sort of assume that Polesworth has equal weighting to Atherstone and Coleshill. It's just the point I made in terms of this particular terms of this grant or its allocation, and I think it, you know, what has been spent has been very welcome, has had some impact. I'm not quite sure how it relates to the impact of COVID on the high street and recovery from COVID, which I think is one of the objectives, priority 6, was it, that supporting local authorities to develop plans responding to the medium-term impact of COVID-19. Because I mean, obviously, under that priority, nothing is reported, but obviously a lot of work has been done to spend this money.
Thanks, Les.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Surely when Simon does his report that Marion has very correctly asked for, perhaps the philosophy or the way it was arranged, or the thoughts to make each allocation to each of the 3 recipients.
Yeah. Yeah. So the thinking behind how the allocations were made would be really good.
Just on that, I mean, clearly we'll provide some contextual information, but quite a lot of it, I mean, we didn't do this on our own. Obviously, it was done in conjunction with parish and town councils and with the town partnerships, and a lot of it was in response to what those partners were bringing forward, and then how the money was allocated after that. But we'll provide some context within the note that we circulate.
Thank you. Good. So I don't see any more hands. I'm going to move to the recommendation, which is that the board notes the work undertaken in delivering the local reopening the High Street Safety Stroke Welcome Back Fund programme of work in Atherstone, Coleshill and Polesworth. Thank you. Proposed by Councillor Smith and seconded by Councillor Jordan. Thank you very much. Those in favour? Any against? Thank you. That's carried. We have a similar in the sense that it's already gone, a similar paper in item 10, which is on the Queen's Platinum Jubilee Celebration Grant Scheme. So this was a report on how that money was spent, and a very welcome bit at the end where some feedback on the people that's received the grant. Got any comments or questions from anywhere? Yes, thank you, Jen.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to say I think this was a really good use of the money that was available, and I think, as you can see from the comments at the end, it was really well appreciated by those who took part in it. I think we should sort of acknowledge the hard work that went into allocating the grants and working out by our officers and some of the councillors who were involved in that, because I understand it took quite a long time to do that. But, one comment I would make, it's not a criticism and it doesn't make any difference, but in the allocation of the breakdown by ward, so for example under Kingsbury it's showing Middleton Parish Council, and Middleton Parish Council isn't part of Kingsbury, so I think that's sort of been wrong. Not that it's part of my ward, but Maxstoke Village Hall is shown under Curdworth, but I don't think that's right.
You don't want to imply there's some mergers going on that nobody else knows about.
I think just well done to everybody. I think it was a really good use of the money.
Thank you very much. That's great. Thank you. Yes, Simon.
Yeah, it was just to say that one of my neighbours applied for some of the funding, and we organised a street party in St Leonard's View. We shut part of the street. We had lots of residents come down for the street party. It was really sort of well received. And I think it's one of them things that these sort of community events bring people together. I mean, I sat and chatted with neighbours who've lived a few houses away from me for years, and I've never really said more than hello to them before. So it was really nice to sit down and make those connections with people. So I think things like this are really important, those community events that we engage in, if we can get funding for them, getting people together, getting people actively involved in the community. It was really sort of enjoyable event, and it was nice to sort of spend time with people who I know, but to actually sit down and take that time to get to know them, have conversations with them and spend that time together as a community. It was really, really enjoyable. So
yeah, thank you. Jackie first and then.
Yeah, I just wanted again to sort of congratulate all the people that took this forward. And I think it was the right balance between a small grant scheme and the kind of careful control of public money in terms of making sure that whoever was getting it was being held accountable and was being chased in terms of actually what was going to happen, was it consistent with what they'd applied for and so on. So it was that nice balance between not too much bureaucracy, but enough to enable it to happen and not feel like a burden. I know that one of the issues of evidence was the submission of photographs to show that that had been done. And I'm aware that a lot of photographs were submitted. What I wasn't aware of was how we've used those photographs for promotional activity on our website to show how the borough did around this time. And time is passing, interest is passing, and I can only remember one photograph appearing of an event, and I can't remember even which one it was, but it certainly didn't reflect the breadth of the engagement that there was around that, and that sort of showpiece, if you like. I was quite surprised that we haven't seen anything yet, but it may be me that I haven't been following it sufficiently actively.
So do you want to respond to that? I'll come to you in a minute, Mark.
Just through you briefly, Chair. At 4.4, we've referred to the photographs being showcased through our social media platforms. I'm not on any of them, so I haven't seen them and that sort of thing, but they were put through there. There's also been a display. It might be in the Civic Suite somewhere. Whether that gets toured around or not, I would have to check from some colleagues and things like that. But we're endeavouring to promote where we've had the opportunity to do so.
It was going to be along similar lines. It was the fact that it has been such an amazing success, such a huge piece of work that's been kind of across the borough, and just to make sure that we're kind of capturing the impact on our communities and the community development. I don't think the comments that have been given necessarily do it justice. I think that, you know, from talking to people that were at these events and from being at a couple myself, I think that we might have been better kind of tailoring the response forms so that we actually get that community cohesion and almost prompting people to kind of give us what we need to hear. But I think that, the comments don't do them justice. I think it was really important, and just making sure that we are celebrating it and the photos are out there and that we've captured what was so brilliant about it for moving forward.
Great, thank you. Mark?
I was just going to answer Councillor Chambers' point that there is actually a display in the Civic Suite where the pictures are going up as we speak, I believe.
Chairman, if I may, yes, I'm sure, well, I haven't seen that, but I kept looking on our website to try and see under the news or the latest things, like some images, some visual representation of that, that Queen's Jubilee celebration that had been funded by the Borough Council. And I know it's very wide ranging, and I know, and a lot has happened on individual social media sites where parish councils and groups have posted, but it's just, we don't see, of the things that were submitted, we don't seem to have put that showcase board up yet. I may be wrong, Simon, but I've not seen it, and I do follow Facebook anyway.
Good, that's a really good point. So yes, take every opportunity we can to get those up online. So I think we see it. Thank you. So if anyone's happy to move to recommendation, the board notes the successful delivery of the Queen's Platinum Jubilee Celebratory Grants Programme as detailed in this report and the associated policies. Opposed? Thanks, Simon. Seconded. Thank you, Marion. All those in favour? Against? Thank you. So, item 11, hedgehog friendly strimming. Hedgehog friendly strimming. So, you can see the report is there to save this endangered species. You've got any comment? Oh, right, okay, we'll go straight to questions then, Mark.
I have a question. How can you set a strimmer to strim 30 centimetres off the floor, please?
Through YouTube, without being too technical, the operative folds it 30 centimetres when they carry out the strimming.
They're all going to be going on signature, aren't they?
Or stand further away from where you're strimming and put it at a slightly lower angle. I'm not an expert, as you can tell.
Yes.
But suffice it to say, Lorna Barnett, who has given the information for this, who's our Grand Street Operations Manager, is. So they're certainly well versed and very keen, actually, our teams are, in terms of changing the way they're doing some of these maintenance operations to make these changes, to make these improvements. So yeah, they've certainly been able to carry it out successfully without the guidance, as you can probably tell.
Sorry, through you, Chair. Don't get me wrong, I've got nothing against hedgehogs. Stop that there now. But it just, does it not seem to make the area a mess? I mean, 330 centimetres, it's still quite high, isn't it? Are other councils doing this?
It's through years, it's certainly been rolled out more and more in local authorities, and you'll be aware, as we've spoken about before in this forum, about the need to increase the amount of biodiversity and habitat diversity there is within the borough. I think what we need to be clear on is that this is not leaving all grass long. This is certainly focused on edges and boundaries, and particularly where it neighbours existing habitat, so hedgerows, borders, that sort of thing. So so you will see, for the most part, the normal sort of cut that we do, verges and open spaces and that sort of thing, cut to a normal sort of length for our grassed areas. But where there are those margins, which is where you find these sorts of wildlife habitat, that's where we're leaving that higher amount of grass at a deeper margin, so that you don't get the visual impact so much, but you do hopefully get the benefit and broaden those areas of biodiversity around the margins of our parks and open spaces. So that's the aim of the exercise.
Yeah, thank you.
Could I just go back, answer that?
All right, one point, and then I'm going to Andy.
When you say natural habitat, you mean going onto fields and such like, and hedgerows, you'll be leaving about a foot high, but you'd still go up to, say, private fences and what have you, and string the whole area, wouldn't you?
No, we'd probably leave those edges longer as well, for exactly the same reason, that wildlife corridors are generated by allowing areas that link places of habitat to be connected. So you do need to try and keep, the margins to a height. Well, I'm struggling to believe that we're having this conversation, Chair, but the aim is to try and make sure that we are allowing enough of that type of habitat left when we finish our work to enable those species to be out of danger, but also to have habitat to thrive in. I think is probably the wider concept. But it's not just hedgehogs, and we've spoken about the need to increase biodiversity, and habitat at some length before. It's going to form a significant part of our climate change action plan as well. We do need to balance the amenity of an area with habitat preservation and biodiversity increase and biodiversity gain. Which is why we're coming to you with these sorts of things to show you how we think they'll work in practice. I'd like us to do more of this, if I'm honest, but obviously we need to do it in a way that preserves the overall look of the borough, so that you don't get those areas that look unkempt and unmanaged. And there's a difference between wildflower meadows and biodiversity and all that sort of thing being done in a managed and controlled way and just letting nature run riot. And we're not advocating the latter, we're advocating the former. We're advocating a sort of light touch management of our open spaces to give these increases in biodiversity that we're looking for. Thank you.
And was it in next? Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Just a question. Does this apply just to the land that the Borough Council is responsible for, or do we do the same on where we cut grass for the parish councils and the town councils, or do we talk to them about it first?
Yeah, in terms of, if we're doing anything different for parish council, we obviously speak to the parish council first because they set the specification of what we do. County council are moving in this direction as well. We actually over-provide, as you'll be aware of the conversation we've had previously, in terms of what we do for verge maintenance for the county council. So we will be looking to do that where it's the appropriate way of doing it. But with all these things, we will speak to partners and colleagues about what we're planning to do before we do.
Okay, thank you.
Marion,
Yeah, just. Is this going to mean we're going to be cutting more to keep it down to that height? Because when the verges weren't cut, we got loads of complaints that they were untidy. When the verges are cut, we get loads of complaints that we're not looking at that biodiversity. We just can't win. But if they become untidy, then we're not going to win because we are going to get more complaints. So are they going to be needed to be cut more? So is it going to cost us more money?
It shouldn't do, no, because what we'll try to do is leave, and this won't apply in all areas, but what we'll be trying to do is leave the margins at the back to be managed in a slightly different way. But all our teams that go out and cut grass do several things, but predominantly trimming and mowing. So obviously mowing will continue to do as you'd expect us to do, to put it down to centre court Wimbledon standards. That's what we're aiming for. Your strimming will be done to a lower level, but we'll still be visiting the same amounts of time. We just won't be cutting back as far as we've done previously. Previously, we'd have just tried to level everything to roughly the same height. But obviously, you do your strimming in those areas that you can't get the mowers into, where you've got your obstacles and your boundaries and whatever. What we'll be doing is the mow continues to leave the margins that it always does, and instead of the strimming team cutting that right back to ground level, they'll be leaving that height at the same margin that we normally have around obstacles and that sort of thing. So it shouldn't cost any more. It shouldn't lead to a poorer service or a less frequent or even a more frequent service. It just be done in a slightly different way while they're outside.
thank you. Carrie.
It was just about the promotion of publicity, because I think it's a great idea. I have some concerns about protecting other small mammals in Arley because they're not all welcome. But I think about the promotions, and I think about the residents' complaints and things like that. That I think that comes down to the education programme. I think we've really got to get that clear message out that it is an intentional thing. It needs to look intentional. And I wondered whether alongside that we could, I know we've already talked about rewilding and introducing wildflower, but something like yellow rattle or something, do you know what I mean, to start making it look intentional. Because obviously if you've got a wildflower border or something very simple, then that looks as if it's meant to be, then it's less likely to attract those complaints while still providing an habitat.
No, absolutely. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, one of the things you find is once you start to manage things in a different way, you find when natural species come back anyway. But yeah, some of that you'll want to leave and some of it you'll want to remove. So it's about, but you're right, it is about letting the public know what we're doing and why we're doing it. So, you know, so that it doesn't look as if we've done half a job. So we do need to be proactive in terms of what we're saying, you know, why we're doing it, the reasons we're doing it, and what people should expect. So that there definitely needs to be education and promotion accompanying this. And I think it's important as well that we sort of spread that wider message of biodiversity, that this is something we're moving to do more of. Yeah, because there are quite a few things that we are looking to change, to reduce our reliance on chemicals and that sort of thing, to do things in a far more natural and sustainable way. So every change we make is moving towards a more sustainable way of managing our green space.
Thank you. Simon and then Hayden.
Yeah, it was just to say really that I sort of fully support this really. I think the hedgehogs are sort of much loved mammal in the British countryside. It's, you know what I mean, it's part of our sort of culture really. You think back to like Beatrix Potter and, you know what I mean, hedgehogs are sort of, and funnily enough, I saw a hedgehog on Saturday night with my daughter and she was so excited and sort of overjoyed to see a hedgehog out. So I mean, I fully support it. Like you say, that creating wildlife corridors, increasing biodiversity. It's not just hedgehogs that will benefit from it. There'll be lots of other species, invertebrates, other mammal species, bird species will all benefit from this. But I was going to make the same point that Councillor Gosling's just made, really, that we need to make sure that the sort of, we tell people while we're doing it. You know what I mean? We're doing this specifically to help support hedgehogs and support other species, and we're not just doing it because we couldn't be bothered to go and cut that bit of grass there. We're doing it for a purpose. It's managed. I think I've done lots of volunteering with the Wildlife Trust at Polesworth, at Abbey Green, and we've done lots of things there. And we had a stall there where people were asking me about why has that not been cut? And when you explain to people and say, well, actually, it's to promote biodiversity, it's to promote habitat for different species. People very often are like, oh, I understand why you're doing it now. There's a purpose to it. Like I say, it's not just because the council are cutting back and not bothering to do things. There's a specific purpose for it. So I think that'll be my only point, really, just to make sure that people understand and we publicise it. And if there are sort of information boards, anything like that, so people know why something's being done.
Yeah, that's very good suggestion, because yeah, obviously I go to things social media, but we appreciate not everybody will read that, not everybody will link what we've just done with the social media post. So I think actually, yeah, information boards, if it's appropriate, would be quite a good way of saying, you'll notice that this now looks like this, or this is the reason for it. And by the way, visit this website for more information. How you can do the same in your garden.
Brilliant.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Most of what I was going to say has been said. I think it's an excellent report and really support it. I think that as far as the publicity is concerned, I think it needs to be, as everybody said, ongoing, because I think, you know, it eventually will get through to people. As most members get people coming to be talking about the grass, and when, like I say, when you try to explain it to them, you know, they do start to understand. I'm more shocked to realise that Richard's not an expert on everything. I always assumed he was. So I'd like to move the report, Chair.
Thank you very much.
Very kind of you, Councillor. When I first read this report, I thought it was actually about friendly hedgehogs who were going out swimming. I was quite pleased to realise what we're actually talking about.
You thought you'd recruited?
Absolutely, yes. A team of small mammals doing out there.
Yeah, that'd be great. So we have, it's been moved by Councillor Phillips, and the recommendations are that members note the contents of the report and endorse the actions taken, and that the scheme is publicised alongside measures which residents can take to make their own gardens more hedgehog friendly. So we just need a seconder, Simon, and those in favour? Against? Lovely, that's carried. Thank you very much. We move on to agenda item 12, which is budgetary control report up to June 22. And you've got everything there, but please feel free not to ask any questions. Thank you, Councillor Smith, please.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Recently, I know we all have it, with regards to fly tipping at various times. We've had a couple of incidents in Philongley, and which I have discussed with Richard, obviously, and yourself. And I just wondered if we could have an update where we are on our existing security cameras and if we're sure they're doing the job, or are they perhaps redundant as time goes on? And I would appreciate an update at this time.
Thank you, because there is a small underspend on flight tipping. Yeah.
That's right, Chair. Thank you. Through you, Chair. Yeah, you'll be aware from the conversation with our council that the CCTV cameras that we deployed may not quite resource intensive, actually, in terms of the battery life and the SD cards running so quickly. So we are looking at, and I think colleagues in Simon's division have also been working with the PCC to get funding for better cameras. We are looking to upgrade our security cameras in the very near future and trying a different approach and a more intensive approach to CCTV surveillance for flight tipping. And we also are starting to make some progress as well in terms of enforcement with our colleagues in environmental health and some of the evidence we've already gathered. So they are successful when we can get the evidence from them, but they are incredibly labour intensive, that they do need an awful lot of maintenance. And we hope that this new way of deploying cameras will be far better, both in terms of the resource it needs to deploy them and monitor them, but also in terms of the evidence that they capture and the ability of our colleagues in environmental health to then take that forward to prosecution successfully. So yeah, we are looking to change the way that we do this, trying to make it more efficient. It has been up to this point, Chair.
Through you, Madam Chairman, could I ask if the consistency of flight tipping is pretty standard? Is it, or is it becoming more at this time operating because with costs and one thing and another? And it may, obviously, flight tipping is a major cost to the authority that we need to prevent as much as we can, both from a financial point of view and the actual act of tipping.
So what's the trends?
Yeah, the level of flight tipping has been fairly stable over the last 12 months. Actually, we've seen year-on-year increases for as long as we've been looking at flight tipping numbers. I think this year so far has been fairly similar to last year in terms of flight tipping numbers. What we haven't seen so much of them, which is why you'll see the slight underspend in the budget control report, is that we haven't seen quite so much, touch wood, of hazardous waste being flight tipped or asbestos and the like, which is one of the things that really does cost us in terms of removal. But members will know you only need one trailer load to be dumped, and you're back into serious expenditure territory. So it's one of the reasons why actually working with partner agencies, and we do work closely with the police, with the county council and others, and getting these better types of surveillance in. We need to keep on top of it because it's a perennial problem. It's certainly not going away, but recently numbers have stabilised. But across the country, it's nationally it's still a significant problem.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Jodie?
Just kind of looking at the refuse and recycling, we've got an overspend due to the green waste not being as successful this year, and also kind of reflecting on the reports that we've had about the increase in general refuse in the black bins because of that. I was just wondering where that position sits. And then I suppose my second point would be about concerns about the employee vacancies. And we've already heard that there's been limited capacity in environmental health, limited capacity in community development. And we still aren't managing to attract the right people to these posts, and how limiting that is to our services, and whether we've got any answers to that. Yeah.
Thank you. So on the green bin, is that you, Sue? Do you want to answer that?
Chair, well, if I start off, I'm sure Rich will come in and help me out if I get too stuck on refuse charges and the like. But certainly we do appear to have less income at this point than we were hoping for. But what we have tended to do is to assume all the income comes in one go when we first start with the service at the beginning of the season. Now that didn't happen last year, and it hasn't happened again this year. So I am hoping, ever hopeful, that some of the take of that scheme will continue to trickle in, which will start to reduce that apparent income shortfall. If things proceed as they did last year, there's a good chance of that happening. Clearly, we are still struggling a little bit with recruitment issues in a variety of services. Some of that I think have impacted on refuse and recycling a little bit, although I think we're perhaps starting to get on top of that to some extent. But it does go throughout the organisation. This isn't just an issue for ourselves as a local authority. I mean, nationally, there is a lot of recruitment difficulty across the piece in local government. So I think increasingly we're having to start to look at different ways of trying to get people into the organisation. I'm afraid it's a work in progress, but we continue to try and chip away at it across the different services.
Yeah, and through you, Chair, we still, as Sue was saying, we continue to take sign-ups for the Garden Waste service well into September, I think even October last year. And we're still running at the rate of about 100 permits a week still being bought. So the hope is, and the expectation is that by the time we get to the end of next month or even the month after, we'll be there or thereabouts in terms of Garden Waste permit.
Jackie, sorry, you've got.
Yes, thank you. I mean, overall, if you look at some of the bigger areas, we seem to be heading for overspends, which are almost certainly beyond our control to a certain extent. I mean, I'll pick up the point about leisure facilities under 331. The underspend on premises and overspend on supplies may not continue to the year end. And we seem to be offsetting this kind of trend towards overspending with vacancies and not recruiting. And I just wonder in terms of this whole area that this board is responsible for, whether we have got the complete picture really of actually what the challenges are for us as we move through the year, because it does feel like everywhere you look, if we didn't have so many staff vacancies, we would be looking at a much bigger overspend than we've currently got. So, and I suppose it's a catch-22. If we were recruiting up to, you know, all the full staff posts that we've got, then is that the case that we would still be looking at significant and not making, in a sense, offsetting the overspend? What is the projection that we need to understand as a board around some of these big areas and, you know, the challenge of getting the budgets in balance?
Yeah, thanks, Jackie. That's interesting because I suppose there's two categories of staff vacancies. There's one where if the demand has gone down for some reason, then we don't need the staff to be replaced. Fair enough. But then there's the issue where we can't get staff, so the service is stretched or whatever. We might be saving money, but we've got to provide a service. So yeah, it's quite interesting. I wonder how we can get to grips with that. So have you got any ideas how that can be presented so we know the underlying budget, if you like, taking out staffing issues?
Chair, well, we can certainly take out the staffing issues, as Councillor Chambers has mentioned. If some of these other things catch up with the budget, if you like, things like leisure income doesn't, because even to be fair, if the leisure team managed to get more people through the door for the rest of the year, at this point they've already lost a certain amount of income April to June, so that is kind of a given. We can certainly flag up some of these bigger issues around that. We do try, and as you've said in the report, to give you an indication. So if some of those other things catch up to the budget, then you still have that income shortfall potentially. But you're absolutely right in the sense that some of the vacancies around that might be, for example, we've used less leisure coaches because we haven't been putting as many courses on because there isn't the demand. So some of the staff savings actually would be tied to that income loss. So yes, it's not a precise split necessarily, because we do have some staff that cover across a variety of areas. But certainly we can try and give you a better feel for it. As I say, I can't be accurate to the absolute penny there, but we can try and present it in a slightly different way next time so that you get a better feel of that.
I think that would be helpful if it was presented. I mean, we may need an appendix with all the figures in, but if it was just presented on these are the challenges in terms of keeping on budget, or indeed the opposite, you know, these areas of our work are actually performing better than we anticipated. So just so we know where we are. Can I just ask on leisure services, does it feel as if we're staffed to demand, on leisure services? Are we understaffed? Are we overstaffed, or have we just adjusted the people we've got according to the demand? Hi, welcome, Kerry.
Through you, Chair. I think in most areas we're staffed appropriately. As you know, in the past we've had issues with swimming teachers, which have impacted on our swimming courses and lessons programme and things like that. I mean, clearly there is a fundamental issue within leisure facilities in terms of income. Our projections before the start of the year were to be ahead of where we're at. You know, fine that we're doing relatively well in terms of operators nationally, and I know that Councillor Chambers asked for the figure at the last meeting. Across our service, we're probably at about 75% of where we were against 1920 across the whole service programme. Consultants that we're working with have indicated that nationally that figure is about 71%. That's no crumb of comfort when we're still short of income and stuff like that. So we might be doing relatively well, but we need to do better. But Sue's made the point that to catch up to where we thought we were going to be before the year started would be extremely difficult. So we're managing our staff budget and staff complement as best we can, but we've still got more work to do to narrow that gap.
Okay, thank you. So next time then we can get a report along those lines. That would be really helpful. Any comments? We're on item 12. Thank you. So we're going to go to the recommendation that the report be noted and the board requests any further information it feels would assist in its monitoring of budgets under the board's control, which we have done next time. Okay, so proposed is Senator Stalin, seconded. Thank you, Andy. All those in favour? Thank you. Any against? Thank you, that's carried. So, moving on, we have 2 sets of minutes from the Health and Wellbeing Working Party. So I'll just pass over to Councillor Marion Humphries and see if there's anything she wishes to draw to our attention.
Thank you, Chair. I'll go on to the 5th of July because I think that's got more of an update because some of the updates on the councillor grants is not complete. So if people don't mind, I'll go to the 5th of July, which was a very, very good meeting. And I'm sorry all the members were not able to attend. We had Children North East come down to give a poverty proofing presentation. I don't know if everybody knows about poverty proofing, but this is where people are looking at when children have school meals, but they're actually allocated that they can have free school meals. In some schools, sometimes they're actually identified as free school meals go to another queue or free school uniform. You've got a ticket to go to another place to get your uniform. And what they're saying is it shouldn't matter that you've got free school meal. It shouldn't matter you've got free uniform. You all go to the same line and get your dinner. You all go to the same line and get your uniform. And nothing should ever be identified on a register in the classroom or anything like that, that you are getting something extra. It might be in the school office, but it doesn't have to be on the school register and that sort of thing. And they're finding that some schools are still got this in place. And we have some in North Warwickshire as well. So what they said is that they were working with Swift and George Eliot Hospital as well. They're working with the maternity unit because they found in those areas that poverty proofing was being identified when they were going in to register for having babies or going into hospital. And the working party has requested from them anything to do with North Warwickshire. What are the outcomes? I have a meeting again with them. We have a board meeting again in September, and they're coming back with that information. the circulation of their presentation slides did go out to all the board members, so hopefully you've had them and you've seen them. But it was so interesting to listen to them and to actually go through the presentations. If you haven't had them, please get in touch with Becky Evans and she will send them out to you. It was absolutely, well, it was just very, very interesting. And it went through, they're looking at our leisure centres too, because they're looking at Addiston Leisure Complex, Coleshill Leisure Centre and Polesworth Centre for poverty proofing, to see if children can actually come in. Simon is well into this at the moment, he's looking at it as well. It's a great team effort, and we're seeing how we can actually link in with Simon and see how, as a board, we can help any children in any way that are identified. I mean, I don't know, Simon, if you want to say a little bit about this at this time, or whether you want to wait till the board meeting.
Thank you, yes. Yeah, I mean, we'll obviously get a report from them and they'll bring that into the board with key actions for leisure. We also, obviously, other people in that room, I think there was someone from Carver in different places as well, that we're looking at trying to get sort of the impact of the work that they're doing, and to get piggybacked and embraced and on board with sort of wider. I think the work that people that come and deliver the training and do the poverty proofing do, they've obviously got limited resource, so they'll look at doing the training and doing some learning, but they would embrace people trying to take this further and wider. So if there are people that want to get involved, I think it was sort of mentioned it might be worth getting people from other areas, parish councils, Carver, different areas involved to understand and how we can sort of learn from the actions that come through in other things that happen in the community. So
can you just give an example of, for example, what might change in leisure services because of this?
So leisure services, so as part of the meeting, someone came from which team did that benefits team?
Oh, I was just going to, Usher. I was just going to say that we had, oh, her name's gone from me.
Councillor Davey, wasn't it?
Your Bernadette Davies, sorry, Bernadette. Bernadette Davies came to give us a talk on benefits, because she said the benefit system is not known to all councillors, and they think that they've had one benefit. So if they're on that benefit, they're allowed to get every other benefit going because they're on one benefit, which is not the case. So she said, she gave us a talk on benefits, and I think every councillor would really benefit from having that. And she is very willing to give another talk. But it was so interesting, wasn't it? Because people just didn't know that if they had PIP, oh, that's it, I've got PIP, I can have everything going, and they can't. And this is where they were saying that there are other avenues, weren't there, that they could go through.
There was it sort of came up to look at the process of joining and where it might be different for different people, to try and make that as simple and one process as possible. And through that process, it picks up, you know, if someone has a benefit or an access for free or discounted or whatever, then it's through the same process, so it doesn't feel different. They're similar, sort of pushing things online to make it easy to just access things online themselves and then come into the centre, if that was possible. And then other things just in terms of accessing funding, looking at linking with funders and companies to support projects. And I'm sure they'll have lots more just from talking about, I think a lot of the processes, language used, forms used, just to make processes more.
And it was also poverty proofing was, if you're on benefits, you don't want to go to the swimming pool and say, I'm on this benefit, what can I get in? There would be a way that they could maybe come in and just say, can I speak to somebody? And there would be a room that somebody could take them off to talk it through, instead of at the first entrance is, yes, madam, you're on this benefit, and 7 people are listening behind you. It's actually giving them some privacy to go through and find out what they can do and what they can't do.
That's really, and it just occurs to me as you're speaking, of course, the leisure centre is a really good place to give advice to people. You know, if they want it, it's a really good place that they're going to anyway, that you can help them if they're looking to benefit advice. It's really good.
And some of it might influence membership as well. A lot of people can't have direct debits for whatever reasons, whether it's poor credit or different things. So it's looking at our pay structures.
It's a great initiative. It'd be really good for you to come back when you've got some specifics for North Warwickshire and what impact's been had there. So well done. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks very much to that group. They do a really good job. All those on the working party.
It's only a little query. Do we have free Wi-Fi for people in the leisure services? Because that's a big barrier.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Marion. So we just have to note those reports, and thank you again for the work that you do on it. And that's the end of the meeting. Thank you very much. And it's very good to see you, Kerry. Sorry